We're going inside the ring this week on Sports Talk. What's going on, everybody? It's Nicola Manzo coming to you with the second episode of the new season of Sports Talk of this academic year. As I said, we're going inside the ring. Hope you brought your gloves with you because we are going to take you all inside the biggest fight in boxing this past weekend. We're talking about Canelo Alvarez versus Gennady Golovkin for the middleweight championship of the world. It was fight night in Las Vegas this past weekend, and fight night all across the country for many people who watched the fight, including myself. The fight was in the T-Mobile Arena, as big fights often are, and as I said, it was Canelo Alvarez against Gennady Golovkin, and it was for Golovkin's belt at the middleweight division. So this was a heavily anticipated fight. It is the best fight that could be made in boxing right now, both in terms of money and in terms of entertainment value. Although Mayweather and Pacquiao kind of are making some rumblings now again, but honestly, the fight you saw on Saturday is a better fight than the one you would see if that fight came to fruition later on this year. So, I don't want to waste too much time. I think we're going to step right into the ring here and get down to business because we only have a little bit of time to talk about it, and there's lots to talk about. So, let's start here with this fight. This fight was, first of all, let me say this, an entertaining fight, a great fight. There's really no other way to say it. Two fighters who really left it all in the ring, who really wanted to win, who were frustrated, I think, by the draw the first time around, who both felt as though they deserved the victory. There was plenty of controversy. You know, Canelo had his own frustrations with his own controversies. Golovkin was frustrated because of the controversies. And I think that really led to just a toe-to-toe battle. Two guys with a lot of heart, fighting hard. And it was an overall entertaining fight. I didn't hear anybody say otherwise. I think that everybody that watched that fight on Saturday felt like they got their money's worth. And it's great for boxing. The fringe fans that may have tuned into that fight, you're going to see the opposite reaction from what happened with the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight, where the fringe fans felt as though, that wasn't really a fight. Well, this was a fight, and this will have a nice impact on boxing, I think, and with the way this fight finished so closely, I think we will see a third installment of the fight. So what happened in the fight? Well, if you didn't see the fight, here's what happened. After 12 hard-fought rounds, there were no knockdowns or any of that stuff. The fight did go the distances. Both the fighters have excellent chins. We ended up with a majority decision in favor of Canelo Alvarez. So the first score they read there that night was from Judge Glenn Feldman, who scored the bout 114 even, and he scored it as a draw. And then the other two judges at ringside overruled him, Dave Moretti and Steve Weisfeld, who both scored the bout 113 in favor of the new champion, Canelo Alvarez. So let's unpack this fight a little bit. This is Golovkin's first loss. Pushes Canelo to 49 wins in his career. And it was a fight where the decision wasn't as controversial as the first fight, but there still was a lot of differing opinion to go around here. Now, I will tell you this much. I had the fight scored 116-112 for Golovkin, 8 rounds to 4, and I saw a lot of similar scores to that. I felt as though Golovkin did a nice job establishing his jab. I felt he did a nice job, especially given the position he was put in by Canelo, which all credit to Canelo and his team for that strategy, because that was an excellent strategy, putting him on the back foot like that. Golovkin's not used to fighting like that, and it forced him into an awkward position. He couldn't really get himself going early in the fight, and some of those early rounds were close, and I said that to the people I was watching the fight with. These could be scored either way. These are pretty paper-thin rounds right now, and the CompuBox numbers back that up. But, later on in the fight, I felt Golovkin did take control of the fight. I know CBS Sports, I believe, scored the last 6 rounds of the fight for Golovkin. I didn't go that far, but they felt as though he was just that dominant over the course of the second half of the fight. I felt Golovkin won. I watched it back again to see if my beliefs were reaffirmed, and they were. I think that Golovkin deserved a decision victory in this fight. You got to feel for the guy who probably feels that he won twice and walks away with no wins, 1 loss and a draw out of it. It's not a knock on Canelo. He fought a good fight, fought a hard fight, but I had it 8 rounds to 4 for Golovkin. So in the same respect, I'm not mad about it per se, because I think Canelo brought the fight to him and he gave it his all. But in the same respect, I do feel Golovkin won, and 8 rounds to 4, I can't necessarily say that it was close because that would be maybe a bad representation of my score, but it was a close fight in the respect that a lot of the rounds were close, but 8-4 for Golovkin for me. So let's take you through before we get into the fight itself, let me take you through some of the major scores from big-time people in the industry. So Dan Rayfield from ESPN, he's one of the biggest names in the sport. He scored it a draw for ESPN. CBS Sports had it 116-112 for Golovkin. Sports Illustrated also had it a draw. Kevin Iole of Yahoo Sports had it a draw. Lance Pugmire from the LA Times had it a draw. USA Today 115-113 Golovkin. Sporting News 116-112 Golovkin. Now, I struggled to find an Alvarez score. I couldn't find one. So that's a little telling right there. I mean, I think a draw would have been more appropriate, but like I said, we're not here to take away from Canelo's win. But I am here to tell you that I do think that he lost the fight. That's my opinion. And ultimately, I look forward to a third one where we could settle the score here. But all credit goes to Canelo for fighting a hard fight and fighting the fight, I guess, the way a lot of people would say the right way. But so let's start, I guess, with the CompuBox numbers here before we get into a breakdown of the fight. Kind of a recap, sort of like in terms of getting into more depth with it here. The CompuBox numbers, I found it in a Forbes article actually, where if you do look over the numbers, Golovkin outlanded Canelo in 8 rounds of the 12 that the fight went. So that is representative of my score. I didn't necessarily score all the rounds in accordance with the rounds that he outlanded Canelo in, but, outlanding somebody is a major part of a fight. Now, obviously, more goes into it than that. Who's pushing the action? Who's the aggressor? Who's landing the bigger shots, the more meaningful shots? And Golovkin did land the most meaningful shot in the fight. He did hurt Alvarez at one point in the fight. Canelo bounced right back, to his credit. Both guys have excellent chins, but, Golovkin did land the most significant blow of the fight, and I thought that was something just that was worth including here. Now, when you get down more into jabs versus power punches, Canelo won the power punch battle, 143-116, while Golovkin doubled Canelo exactly, 118-59. So, overall punch stats, Golovkin 234 to Alvarez's 202. Now, here's what I have to say about this. In scoring this fight, a lot of people are going to say Canelo landed the bigger shots. And that's partially correct. But here's the thing that bothers me about people that score these boxing matches and say that a jab matters. A jab is part of a fight. It may not matter to some as much as a power shot does. And in a lot of fights, it shouldn't matter as much because power shots are bigger shots. But if we said the jabs didn't matter and fighting off of a back foot didn't matter and fighting a defensive fight didn't matter, then, we wouldn't be talking about Floyd Mayweather being 50-0 right now. We would never get a decision win. Floyd Mayweather is, I think in most people's minds, the fighter of this generation. Along with a few other guys, he's one of them that's up there. The man's never lost. He's been knocked down only technically once. It really wasn't even a legitimate knockdown. But we're going to all of a sudden start discounting jabs and discounting fighting off of the back foot. I give credit to Canelo and his team. That was a brilliant strategy. Brilliant strategy. But the bottom line is that jabs do count. Fighting off the back foot doesn't mean you lose rounds. Just being a pure aggressor doesn't win you rounds. I think everybody agrees this fight was a close fight. But if you're going to go into it with that logic, that's not correct. That's not a good logic to go into it with. I agree a lot of the rounds are paper thin. I could understand how some rounds would have been flipped for people. And ultimately, like I said, I'm not here to take anything away from Canelo Alvarez. He fought a hard fight. I grew up rooting for Canelo in a lot of his fights. But if I'm being honest, Gennady Golovkin, I root for him as well. He's one of my favorite fighters. And I go about this fight when I score it unbiased, and watching that fight, Golovkin won more rounds for me. I think that even though Canelo had him on his back foot, Golovkin was still jabbing. He was still remaining active. I just think that he deserved the victory. But overall, the takeaway from this fight should be, it was a great fight. It went the way nobody expected it to. If you read my Woodward article last week about how I expected the fight to go, and I think if you read anybody's article about how they expected the fight to go, nobody would have said that, Canelo would have come out and put Triple G on the back foot. That's not a bad strategy, but I just don't think anybody saw it playing out that way, especially the way the first fight went. All credit to Canelo and his team, though. They prepared a good strategy. They forced Golovkin into an awkward position, one that I thought he handled enough to win the fight, but you have to give him credit that they at least employed a different strategy, and one of the takeaways a lot of people said was that Canelo learned from some of his mistakes in the first fight, and Golovkin didn't. The 12th round was the deciding round in this fight. If you look at the judges' scorecards, one judge, Glenn Feldman, gave the 12th round to Golovkin, and that made it a draw. And the other two gave it to Canelo, and that made it a 115-113 decision. If you look at the CompuBox numbers, it was 21-20 for Alvarez in terms of punches landed. I mean, I scored the round for Golovkin. I felt it was a strong Golovkin round. I just felt as though he was the guy that was doing a lot of the work early in the round, and then Canelo kind of came on, but I still feel like he was active enough, and he dominated the earlier part of the round enough that he deserved it. But again, the takeaway here is great fight, two great fighters, no controversy here to mar it, no bad card, no ridiculous wide scoring. Would I have given it to Canelo? No, I wouldn't have. Do I feel Golovkin won? Absolutely I do. I feel strongly about that. Would I go as far to say that Golovkin was robbed? It's tough to say that, but I do think that, 8-4 is kind of, when you score a fight 8-4 and they end up scoring it for the other guy, you're a little bit far off from where the other people saw it. So maybe it's unfair to call it robbery because, like I said, a lot of those early rounds could have went either way. I feel as though the second half of the fight was Golovkin's fight. But ultimately, good fight for boxing, good fight for the fans. It's nice to see everybody get their money's worth. It's nice to see everybody leaving happy. I can't wait for the third installment if there is one. And it was just a very good weekend to be a boxing fan. Right, everyone? That's the end of our podcast for the week. Thanks for tuning in to Sports Talk. We're going to have episodes, plenty more coming up for the rest of the semester here and then next semester as well. We got lots to talk about. You already know the sports world's buzzing. We got MLB playoffs coming up, amongst plenty of other things. NBA season is going to start up. The hockey season will start up. We're going to cover it all here on Sports Talk. So thank you all for tuning in very much. And until next time, I'm Nicolo Manzo.